Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. I am Haley Weigel, VP of Advertising Services at PMP. We've got Jim Paquette with us here, and I'm going to introduce him a little bit later. But thanks for being here. We're excited to have this conversation. This topic originally piqued our interest at PMP back in June, July of this year. There was an opportunity for us to participate in a fairly large deal with an athlete in Alabama. And while we didn't end up signing that deal, there were some really exciting preliminary discussions that we had with friends and experts in the space, and we realized that hey, there's some wiggle room here for us to have an informed opinion and dig around and potentially offer this to clients and then other personal injury lawyers that might be interested in this across the country. So again, we're excited to get started. Since we only have a short time planned here today, I want to hit some quick intros about PMP, Jim, and then we're going to hit some quick highlights, and then we're going to open the floor for discussion sort of as quickly as we can here. So let's kick off. Carol, if we could go ahead and move into the first. There we go. And then the next slide there is going to talk about PMP. So, PMP is a full service marketing agency built exclusively for personal injury and consumer law firms. And we help firms grow through strategic media buying, creative campaigns, and performance driven marketing that turns awareness into more signed cases. We also recently launched, you'll see down there, offerings for social media and community involvement, which of course dovetail beautifully into today's conversation. So, if there's any interest or any need, if you guys aren't a B&B client, we'd love to connect and chat with you after today's meeting. I do want to formally welcome our guest, Jim. Jim's a longtime college sports leader and founder of JRP and Associates, helping schools and athletes reach their full potential. From Loyola to Boston College, he's helped champions on and off the field, and we're very lucky to have him with us today. So thanks so much, Jim.
Thanks, Haley.
So as Jim and I were preparing, we decided what would be most helpful and quite honestly, most fun and engaging is just to move into the question and answer section as quickly as we can and just maximize our time here. That being said, we do want to set a foundation and talk through a couple of quick slides, just so that we're all on equal footing here. I'm mostly going to talk through these first couple of slides. I'm going to ask Jim to hop in here and there, and then we'll let you know when we're ready to kind of move into questions. So here on this slide, sort of what is NIL? You know, at its core, NIL represents more than just sponsorship. It's a new model for authentic, local, and emotionally resonant storytelling that connects communities through people that they already admire, and in this case, athletes. This space, NIL, has transformed college athletics kind of in a really short period of time, allowing athletes to profit from their personal brands. So, what began as a policy shift has quickly evolved into a $2.3 billion marketplace, and it's projected to continue to grow at nearly 9% annually through the next couple of years through 2029. Two things I want to point out here, both of these quotes on this side. The first one here, it's not just marketing, it's a trust transfer. In personal injury, trust and credibility go a long way. Just listen to any of us marketers talk to you about the importance of Google reviews. I'm sure for those of you running LSAs, you're probably sick of hearing that. But it's really important. It's a trust transfer, and that credibility goes a really long way. So when there's an opportunity to partner with an athlete that's loved and respected by the community for his or her talents, when you attach yourself to them, you're transferring or borrowing some of that trust and excitement that they have. The second quote down here, brand love starts local. About 70% of personal injury firms are single office or just local, which means that we really don't need to lock into this huge national brand or attach ourselves to a big, national athletes to make this work for us. Brand love starts local. People want to see you investing in local athletes right in their own backyard. And then right here in the middle, why does this work? Why do sports really work for this? Actually, one of the women that I interviewed for the preparation for this sort of had a fun angle about it, and I want to share a little bit. But essentially, there's just a couple of common storylines that we, fall in love with and that you see on repeat, right? And one of the most common is heroes and villains, which is sort of exactly what plays into sports. You've got a home team, something that you love and you support, and you've got your heroes, and then there's the villains, right? There's your opponents. And so sports creates this natural inclination to cheer for someone, to have something to get excited about, of course, specifically whatever your team might be. And then you've got someone to sort of cheer against, and there's this vendetta and there's this story, and it's an age old storyline that really works. And so sports is exciting, it's recognized. Most people have some sort of affinity for some type of sport or some team or some athlete, so there's already this shared cultural experience around emotion and pride, and belonging. So if we can take that excitement and sort of tie it towards this trust transfer for personal injury firms, we can really see the benefit. Last thing here on this slide, 71% of consumers buy from people that they trust. So again, when we talk about tapping into that trust transfer, it sort of all just comes together and makes sense. And so, the sports element and the athletic element, the athletes that we can tap into, allow us to capitalize on that trust, and ideally, for personal injury firms, sign more cases. That leads us to the second slide that I want to touch on here. How do we activate this? What does that actually look like? And so, what we want to encourage you to do is focus on intentionality and the right fit over impressions or likes. Find an athlete that shares your value and purpose, and then co-create with them, right? So don't just try to make something fit square peg, round hole. Look for ways to genuinely serve your community and genuinely have a connection with this athlete that you're going to partner with. One of the things that I thought was really great, Jim, if you don't mind, when you and I spoke, was you talked a little bit about the partnership with Girls and Boys Club that you did through Boston College. Would you be willing to kind of share a little bit what that sounded like and looked like? Because it was really intriguing. It was a different way, as we were talking for the first time, for me to sort of think about NIL and really
Yep,
drive home through the community aspect.
absolutely. So, in my role with Friends of the Heights, which was basically a Boston College athletics adjacent organization that could help out with name, image, and likeness pre August 1, when schools could actually compensate athletes directly. One of the partnerships that we had, and we had many with different 501c3s, was the Boys and Girls Club. And we would have, some of our athletes would go down there on a Saturday morning for 4 hours and spend time at the club. And it was just a really neat thing to have these young kids get the opportunity to meet these athletes that they see on TV, they see in the field, but to get to know them just as people. And also to get these young people excited about college and getting them to buy into the concept of like, hey, if you want to have an opportunity to, not just play a sports, but to go here and get an education and potentially transform your life, you got to study hard. And so I think there were some life lessons that we're able to do. And so that was an example of kind of the nonprofit sector, where NIL was doing a lot of work before. I think post August 1, a lot more has shifted. We always had the commercial side, but I think that's even shifted a little bit more. And Haley, I just want to echo what you said. I grew up in Boston. You can hear it in my voice a little bit, but the former Speaker of the House of Representatives was a guy by the name of Tip O'Neill, and he used to have a saying that all politics is local. And I think that's very similar with corporate partnerships. I think people it's a passion buy for a lot, and people do tend to identify and align, with brands and organizations that are local to the community. And so I think while many people may see, you hear about Alabama or you see what Arch Manning is doing at the University of Texas nationally, I would say that 80 to 90% of these deals are done at the local level, and a level that would certainly be something that people on this call would be able to do with their small businesses.
Awesome. I think that's a great call out. And it was a fun like turning point for me in our conversation when I was like, oh, okay, so these athletes, so we don't just have to take them and put them on a billboard with our attorneys, but we can find some way to
Yep.
lean into some sort of, give back element to really strengthen the narrative, because that's what we're trying to do here. That's what really sets this apart, is furthering the brand story. So anyways, great call out. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and
Uh,
as long as it's with the new rules and it's highly regulated, but the beauty is as a business, the onus is really on the athlete to kind of worry about the reporting and whatnot. And so I think it really does make it a lot easier in terms of the heavy lifting with regulation. That really is on the athlete, their family, their representation for that. So that's something to keep in mind, that it's really not, but it does have to be for valid business purposes. I mean, I think that's something that, it's got to show that it's a valid business purpose in order to be, to go through the approval process.
Sure. Yeah, I think on the next slide, if you don't mind, I was going to ask you to sort of dig a little bit into those, bylaw updates. But um, one moment, Carol, before we get there, I just want to touch on a couple of other things on the last slide, because this is not by no means a full how to, execute this, but
Yeah.
essentially, if it's just like a where do I get started kind of thing. So how does it work if you wanted to sort of take this
Yep.
idea and run with it? So first, we've got to identify the local athletes, ideally, again, whose values align with your firm's brand. So we're not just sort of eeny, meeny, miny, mowing it. We want to find someone that makes sense for whatever reason, whether it's, they have a similar passion, or they are interested in a similar sort of give back to you, or if there's some other playful, fun connection between you as the attorney or someone else on your staff. You're looking for some sort of alignment there. And then there's a couple of different ways to do it, right? I mean, you can jump straight to the university's page, go to their roster. There's a system called Open Door that works.
Yep.
Jim, you'd also taught me a little bit about Playfly,
Yep.
Learfield, some opportunities like that. So,
Yep.
I mentioned too at some point, I know in my paper, and I think I was going to touch on it sort of on the next slide, when we talk about, the little bit more regulation that's come up. But previously this was, and maybe still a little bit, a wild west,
Yeah.
space. But for better or worse, a lot of these athletes, especially when we're talking about tapping into them locally, a lot of times their agent is mom or dad or brother, right?
Yep.
Um, so again, when we talk about like starting small, with thinking strategically, just keep in mind that, we're not talking to massive agents at this level. You don't have to have this big,
No.
robust background to
Correct.
understand. It's just a conversation between someone that can
Correct.
help you grow your brand.
So the easiest way to get started is, and Haley mentioned it, is if there's a particular athlete at a particular school that you have interest in, if you go to the school's website, go to the team, go to the roster, they're all going to list their social medias, which, Instagram, I think, is the preferred way to kind of message most of these athletes. But they'll also, like Haley said, there'll also a lot of times be a link to Open Doors, which is just a platform where there may be some prices that have already been.
Looks like we might have lost Jim. I don't know if that's for everyone or just for me. Okay, well, I'm just going to pick back up with where I was before he jumps back on and joins us here. So he was talking a little bit about one of the ways that we can, initiate a conversation. Of course, going directly to the website, using Open Doors, as he mentioned. There's a couple of other websites and services that can be use to open up those conversations. And then once you've got that under your belt, once you've sort of started some conversations, and again, this is something that ideally PMP would be happy to help you with, but if you wanted to get this going, you're going to open up those conversations and then see, okay, what's my best foot forward here? What does it look like for me to find the right deal and the right angle and create authentic content with this athlete. So that may be social media, that may be appearances, sort of like we talked about, appearances or community events with someone like a Boys and Girls Club. And then again, we're looking long term, right? So how do we build partnerships that emphasize impact, and maybe looking for multiple years, that we can connect with these people, not just a one-off, not just something that's just for exposure. The other thing that we had talked about, which I ended up actually pulling out of this deck today, but I'm going to jump into it while we're hoping for Jim to reconnect, is what platforms should we consider? Like, what would be best to partner with and tap into? So social media comes up a lot. But also this can be used in traditional media, television, billboards, buses. When you partner with these athletes, depending on whether or not you're doing a deal with the school as a whole or with just the athlete directly, there's an opportunity to use the school's logo or not. And so figuring out how to put the right image up there, whether they have the logo or whether they have the colors on, as long as your message resonates when you build out the bus ad or the billboard. There's also television options, production. So again, when you talk about finding the right fit and finding the right person, finding the right budget too, it can be as simple as something that happens just digitally with some images that they already have, or it could be a campaign like a television spot that you actually create together. Welcome back, Jim.
Yep, sorry about that. So, like I said, it's easy to identify the kids, and if you go directly with the athlete, a lot of times that's the easiest way, but they may have a family member or somebody that represents them. Of course, if you want to use the brand, the colors, basically the intellectual property of the school that they represent, you're going to have to work with the school's representative, which Haley had mentioned. The big companies out there are Learfield, JMI, Van Wagner, Playfly, and they're going to get a cut. Any deal that involves them, they're going to get a cut of for it. But I would start with going directly to the athlete and kind of taking your lead from them. I think that's the easiest way, and they're very easy to get to. And candidly, if they don't respond to you quickly with an opportunity to do this, it's probably not an athlete you want to partner with anyways. You'd want somebody that would be very responsive, that from a fulfillment standpoint and activation standpoint is going to work with you closely and efficiently.
Right. Let's just touch real quickly, because I know we're a minute or two further behind than we wanted to be for some questions. Let's just touch real quickly on the bylaw updates from last week. So Carol, we can scoot over one more slide, and then we'll just open up the floor for some questions for folks. So last week, Jim, you had sent me the report, NCAA bylaws from the House settlement that sort of took this from a total Wild Wild West to a little bit less of that. So
yeah, let me try to give the 40. Sorry to interrupt. Let me give you kind of the 40,000-foot level, and it's evolving every day. We could get something could come out there that it changes, but right now, schools are allowed to directly compensate athletes up to $20.5 million. So a school like Alabama can directly do that. Now, there are very few schools that are doing that. That's like the big schools, the Power Four schools, the schools that you see on TV, every Saturday at noon or at 7 o'clock are doing that. But they also have the ability to do what they call real NIL, which is what we're talking about today. And a big school, that would be trying to supplement the $20.5 million payment. At a small school, it would be just trying to generate more revenue and compensation, for the athletes for it. So what we're talking about today is quite simple. As long as it's a genuine business purpose, the athlete goes through the correct protocols for doing it. I think the only complication is just knowing, hey, can I use, if I've got an Alabama football player, can he wear his Alabama, jersey? Because, the before you could only partner with the name on the front of the jersey, right? But now you can also partner with the name on the back of the jersey. The only challenge is you got to pay for both in most cases, for that. So I'm not going to get crazy with how because I think if you get down the road, those are very easy to clarify, but it is a pretty simple thing dealing athlete to athlete. These are small business with local kids. Usually you're doing, partnerships with, and it should be very easy for most people on this call to do. You're not talking about, Arch Manning doing a $2 million deal with Warby Parker. These are really more of these deals are in the, 500 to $10,000 range, I would say, at smaller places. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. So it looks like folks, if you don't see that chat, that Q&A button there, that's where you can toss your questions. We do have one in here, so we'll just jump right into that. This one's from JC, and it says, do all NIL partnerships have to be celebrity athletes?
No, I would say that some of them just you want the best stories. I can't remember the exact school, but there was a football player whose last name was like Cool or something like that. And he ended up doing a name, image, and likeness deal with a local air conditioning company, for it. It was just something that really rang, true. And so I think it's all about, the story. And I think if you do your homework on some of these kids, the schools are publicizing them. If you find somebody that resonates, it might work. But yeah, I mean, the easy thing is looking at their social media, feed and seeing are they active, how many followers that they have. But I think there's so many students and athletes out there that really have some interesting stories that can work. So I I don't think it has to be a celebrity athlete, and I do think that in a lot of smaller markets, I think the brand of the school and the athlete going together does have a synergistic effect. I think they might not know who Jim Paquette is, but if you put Jim Paquette in an Alabama football jersey, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's an Alabama football player. And I think that somehow, helps raise the visibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Two of the folks that I spoke with initially started out with there being just an athlete deal, and then almost immediately or the very next year they just went ahead to the school and layered in the school as well, just because they felt that extra punch when they were able to do that. And there's a lot of different ways to do that too, and Jim, you may be able to comment on that, but you can just choose one team, not necessarily just the entire athletics department. And so there's some opportunities.
Yeah, there's some group licensing deals, that can be done. I think you'll start dealing with the multimedia rights holder. I think you're always going to get away spending less money if you can avoid. As someone who used to work for a multimedia rights holder, it troubles me to say this, but if you can work directly with the athlete, you're probably gonna be able to have a deal that's probably going to be a little bit more budget friendly. When you start dealing with the multimedia rights holders, a lot of times they'll have minimums spends for certain things, like the IP rights will be at a certain level for that. But yeah, no, it doesn't have to be football, basketball. Matter of fact, some of the most successful NIL deals are with softball players, gymnasts, sports that aren't necessarily the ones you think about, the football and the basketballs, for it. And I think sometimes, there has been research. I don't have data to share, but a lot of times the female athletes grasp social media and are active users of social media a lot more. So sometimes their use of videos and different things can spur more exciting and creative activations, for it. So every situation, it's really depending on your town, your city or your region. Like kind of I live in Baltimore right now. Lacrosse resonates down here. So if you were a local, if you're a local firm down here and you're looking to do something, I would say, what, let's think about Maryland or Johns Hopkins or Loyola, Maryland, and let's find a male or female lacrosse player that might kind of work for you, because that might be a nice niche. It's a regional sport. The cost is going to be lower than trying to do Maryland football or Maryland basketball player for it. So I think it all depends on what market you're in. Um, for ice hockey, like my time in Boston, like ice hockey resonates up there, so that would work for it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a new opportunity. Like I said, you've always had the opportunity to partner with the schools and with the name on the front of the, but now you can partner with the name on the back. And I think they're both very good. I think together, it's very powerful.
Yeah. Great. So another one here. Do you have a general recommendation on what to spend for the use of a school logo for mid to major?
Ooh, it's going to be like when you go in a car. It's going to be, what's your budget? It's um, you could spend at a small schools. Some athlete might do something for as little as $500, and if you go to a bigger school and you want to do a deal with a team, it could be $25,000, $50,000. It really depends on the size, the scope, the market. Um, a lot of times when you go to the roster on the team website, look at the athletes. Some of them actually already have pricing on there. And I think it's usually very, very reasonable. They work with Open Doors and some companies and actually have the pricing to do a deal with a kid for basic things.
What about for the school though? Do you have, I
School
mean,
is not going to. Yes, school is going to be more expensive. I mean, I would say a smaller school is going to want to start at 5 or 10 minimum for the most part. A bigger school is going to start with 25, 50, 6 figures, 7 figures. I mean, it really, whether you're going to Loyola, Maryland, or you're going to University of Maryland, same market, but very different scope schools,
and
on
is
it.
that
So,
typically for a year? Do they usually want like a
well, they
multi-year
want a
deal?
multi. I mean, they're going to want multis
Yeah.
like everybody. They want, if you're dealing with the multimedia rights company, they're going to try to do multis. Multis are a little trickier with athletes because I would say one of the risks is you get an athlete, and let's say we did a lacrosse player at Loyola Maryland and they had an amazing year. Well, they end up transferring to Duke. So all of a sudden now an athlete that you had that was in your community leaves. So I would say the athlete deals tend to be 1 year, 1 season deals. May have some type of renewal clause, in that. But I know there's a seafood, Jimmy's Seafood in Baltimore, which is a pretty famous place. They had a basketball player at Maryland and he left, but he was a Baltimore guy. And so they were able to like adjust the deal, but they still wanted to use him because he still had connections, to the area. So like any type of partnership with any other brand, it's not risk free. I think you really want to do your homework on, on the student, on the athlete, for it, because there is a risk. I mean, I as an athletic director, I just say, all of a sudden when your job really relies on the decisions of 18 to 23-year-old kids, that can be some sleepless nights there. I'm just glad they didn't have social media and iPhones when I was in college. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that a time or two. Awesome, great. Let's see. Do you see more value in partnering with one high visibility athletes or several local ones?
That's I'm gonna Haley. I'm gonna kick that one to you. I mean, I have my thoughts, but you're the expert on this.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's sort of what we've been talking about, throughout the whole day here. I don't know that we need to have several local ones, although perhaps we could. One of the folks that I spoke with actually does a deal with the university, and then he uses a couple of different teams. So I think he actually partners with 3 teams at the university. So it's like women's basketball, and football, and maybe baseball. It's firms that PMP works with, knowing that we're looking at, the local community buy-in, we're going to tell you that the at least as a starting point is to focus on the local one that's got a story that makes sense, that furthers your brand narrative, right? There's a
Yeah.
genuine connection there. If there are, some firms here that have multi-location or that consider themselves to be more regional or statewide, then yeah, a more high visibility athlete may make sense for you, for a lot of reasons, because your footprint is larger, but also, just the size of the firm, you might have a little more money to toss around, and so you're able to do that. Whereas some of the local, single office firms want to get their feet wet, make the phone ring, right? But this is an awareness play. This is very top of funnel, and so typically, when you're making a decision like that, especially when you're trying something for the first time, you want to keep that in mind and know that this is an awareness play, and glean what you can from it. Hear what you're hearing at your own community level, and get the feedback. And again, it's that genuine narrative that we're trying to go for at this point on this level. Um, okay, so the next question here is, are there any pitfalls or things to watch out for when working with younger kids on NIL partnerships?
I think we kind of hit on that. I mean, it's you're dealing with 18 to 20-year-old kids. It's they can get arrested. They can, do something. They can make a bad decision during a game. I mean, what if it's your kid that drops the winning touchdown or fumbles the ball? I mean, I think there are anytime you partner with a single person, I think there's a risk, and yeah, it's probably a little bit of higher risk just because it's an 18 to 23-year-old kid, who sometimes they have momentary lapse of judgments and make bad decisions.
Okay. It's true. That's so true. I even outside of NIL, we talked to a client that I had in a previous life. It was a jewelry store, and we were in the Augusta area, and so there's a lot of golfers, right, famous for the Masters, and he wanted, his business partner was like, let's do this deal with this particular golfer. He's local from here, da da da. And the other partner was like, no way, I don't want to kind of sign up for that. Like, there's definitely some risk there, but it's a risk reward conversation, and for the most part, you're not dealing with that. But sure, it's healthy to have an awareness of that possibility. So we knew this was going to be short, but we're already a couple of minutes over. So, and I don't see any open questions here right this one. Oh, there's one more. Let's sneak it in.
Good.
Will colleges entertain sponsorships and branding for press conference backdrops for lower revenue or non-revenue generating sports? And what might something like that cost?
100%. Great question. You generally see them for the football and basketballs, but I'll tell you from a social media standpoint, a lot of sports will do something. It's now with the iPhones, and it's so easy for a coach post game to do something. So I'd say 100%. You're going to have to work with the multimedia rights holder, and not every school has a multimedia rights holder. The bigger schools generally do. Some schools that they may be handling everything in house. Van Wagner is a multimedia company that works with a lot of smaller schools, but I think it's a great strategy because I think that you can get some exposure, and the price point's going to be lower, for it, depending on the sport. Like at a Boston college, if you went down to baseball or softball or soccer, that might be something. Maybe women's lacrosse, but although they've got some national following there, but I think that's a terrific thought. And the multimedia rights people will jump all over that because they are definitely used to selling that, so they would work with you on that.
Awesome.
I'd ask for
Well,
a
thank
couple
you.
sports. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would say, hey, what sports do you have this as an opportunity for, and would there be a package deal if I did, more than one? That's what my
I think
approach would be.
that's a good call out too. Someone that I just spoke with recently, which is kind of a different strategy, but rather than like handpicking athletes, he had a deal with the university as well.
Yeah.
And he would go to the university and the coaches, and he had relationships with and say, okay, which athlete needs this money, or which team,
Yeah.
needs this the
It,
most, or whatever, and sort
yeah.
of back and forth that way.
Yeah, the tricky part with that is you're kind of moving away from it. That particular arrangement is kind of moving out of the NIL sphere for the athlete. Like that is the multimedia. If a multimedia rights holder has it, they own that. That's something that they own to sell there. That's and so the coach or the athlete might not get compensation directly because that's something that they own the rights for. So, but like strictly from an advertising standpoint, I think it's a good strategy. Like it was, I would encourage somebody to move forward in that regard. I mean, regardless of who ends up getting the money, like I think it's for your firm, it's a good strategy.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jim. I know this is short and sweet, but I really appreciate it. And thanks to those of you who joined us today. If you have any follow-ups or questions, we'll be happy to answer them or get you more information. And everyone enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Haley. Everybody have a great day.